Good afternoon. My name is Larry Creation. I'm the Executive Director of Green Energy Consumers Alliance, and with me today is Michaela Hundress McCarthy. We will give a presentation about green municipal aggregation in your community. We'll talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. We should be done by 1 o'clock. Next slide, please. So the basics will be you'll be muted throughout the webinar, but there's opportunities to put questions into the questions box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end. We'll take all the questions at the end. And afterwards, we will be sending a follow-up email for those who registered, whether you're on this call or you registered and didn't make it, with a recording of the presentation and links to additional resources. We'll have PDF of the slides and a few other things in that email. You'll probably get that within a day or two. Here we are. That's most of our staff, I suppose. We're a nonprofit organization based in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, actually Jamaica Plain part of Boston in Massachusetts, and Providence, Rhode Island. And we have a mission that we recently restated a bit, to empower consumers and communities to speed a just transition to a zero carbon future. So we emphasize the whole statement, but we've emphasizing the fact that we're working with consumers and communities. Speed is of the essence because there is a transition to clean energy that's happening. There's no doubt about that, but it's just not happening fast enough in order to benefit everybody. And so we want to make that go faster, and we want to make sure it's just so that no one's left behind. Today, we're going to talk about a new report. We just published the 4th report of its type. It's on the benefits of green municipal aggregation in Massachusetts. The subtitle is that it continues to produce great results for Massachusetts. Michaela and I wrote that with great assistance from Kate Marcelino, who is helping us out with today's webinar, and Rebecca Toomey, who is a summer intern. We will be doing a report for Rhode Island in 2024. They've had, in Rhode Island, the aggregation has been happening for just a few months, and we'll have more to report on probably next spring or summer. Next slide. So what is GMA? We call it GMA. Green Municipal Aggregation allows a community, a city or town, to negotiate a bulk purchase of electricity for residents. When we talk about communities, we're talking about those that are served by the investor-owned utilities. That would be National Grid, Eversource, or Unitil. They represent about 85% of the customers in Massachusetts. Aggregation does not apply to the cities or towns that have municipal utilities. And we developed the concept of green aggregation with Good Energy LLC. We rolled it out for the first time with Dedham and Melrose in 2016. We define green municipal aggregation as something that will add more renewable energy into the electricity mix than required by the state's Renewable Portfolio Standard, or RPS. We specifically call out a contribution of at least 5% more Class 1 RECs than required by the RPS. We'll get into what that means in a few moments. And we have the data to show that it can save residents money on their electricity bills while adding more renewable energy. Next slide. So this slide shows how we're involved as an organization in the idea of aggregation. So on the right-hand side is you, the community, and the cities and towns are able to be in control. What they will do is they will typically have a consultant called Good Energy, and there are 2 others that serve a lot of the state, will be their consultant. The consultant has a contract with the community. The consultant will help the community select an electric supply company, usually a large company. And what's on the left-hand side is sort of where we come in. By law, electricity suppliers have to have a certain amount of renewable energy certificates to meet the state's renewable portfolio standard. That's the lower left-hand corner. And those are something the supplier has to have in order to meet the state's requirements. We don't help with that part because it should be happening anyway. That supplier is also actually providing the actual physical electricity, the electrons, if you will, that run through the wires. That's their job to make sure there are contracts to meet that. What we do is our organization helps cities and towns get the renewable energy certificates that allow them to go above the state standard. So that's where the top left-hand side of the box, and we end up having a contract with the suppliers that serve a lot of the communities. There are a lot of communities in the state with Green Municipal Aggregation, and we're involved with about 22 of those in Massachusetts right now. I think there's something like 55 in total. But we feel as if that we have set the standard that all the 55 cities and towns have basically been adhering to. So we're pretty proud that we helped develop the model, and we'll talk about some of the results. Next slide. This is essentially a graphic showing how it works, how it affects the community. So once a city or town has decided that it wants to do Green Municipal Aggregation, it has to make a local decision. Then they apply to the State Department of Public Utilities for approval. We'll get into that later. But once they're approved, then the electricity broker, the consultant, like Good Energy, will help the community select an electricity supplier. Everybody in the community that was on the basic service with National Grid or Eversource or Unitil will be swept into the aggregation on an opt-out basis. So the aggregation will offer a default product, as we call it, which is everybody's in unless they opt out. And typically we're seeing communities at about 10% more renewable energy than required by law is what seems to be the most common number. But people can opt out. They can go to another competitive supplier up to the top right-hand corner, and they can opt down within the aggregation, stay within the aggregation. If they don't want to pay a little bit extra for the green electricity, they can get electricity that would be equivalent to the requirement of state law, and they'll save a little bit of money. And they can also opt up to 100% renewable energy, and that's what many communities offer, and increasing number of consumers are doing that. So the opt-out basis is very consumer friendly. They make it very easy for a consumer to opt out if they want to, without penalty at any time. Next slide. Now, as it happens, just the other day.
My name is Laura. Hello, my name is Laura.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to give a little.
Hello, my name is Laura Gardner. I'm a Hello, my name is Laura.
All right, sorry, Larry. Good.
All right, let's go back to, we'll stay in that slide. What I want to do is just give a setup. Just the other day, Laura Gardner from Fairhaven, the town of Fairhaven, produced an excellent 4-minute public service announcement that I think is a great addition to this webinar. We didn't have it planned, but it just came out. Laura does a great job in 4 minutes, sort of, I think, giving facts about the aggregation model, but also sort of really sells it, with her sincerity and with what it means for a community. And she does a great job, and we'll send you the link to the YouTube as well. And it's something that if you're in a community that doesn't have an aggregation, now you can think about what it means. And I do know for a fact that Fairhaven wouldn't be where it is with aggregation if it wasn't for Laura. So we thank her for producing this. And now this will just take 4 minutes, but it's well worth fitting into our hour.
Hello, my name is Laura Gardner. I'm a resident of Fairhaven and a member of the Sustainability Committee. For the past few years, I've been involved in advocating for greater awareness of the Community Electricity Aggregation Program across the South Coast. This program is important because it offers green options for renewable energy at the individual level and also has meant historically
Sorry about that.
significant savings on the electricity for residents who participate. The aggregation program is a town-approved program wherein Fairhaven purchases energy for residents and small businesses in bulk with 24 other towns in Massachusetts over a 2 or 3 year contract. Eversource is required to go out for bid on electricity every 6 months, but we have price stability. We saw electricity prices for Eversource jump by 30% in January of 2023, but those in the aggregation program experienced that price stability over the 2 year contract. Purchasing in bulk and the length of the contract have typically meant savings for residents. Eversource basic rates are comparable to aggregation program rates right now, but Eversource had to go back out for bid for January, and rates for Eversource basic are going back up to 17.251 cents per kilowatt hour, which is only slightly less than our Fairhaven Plus option. So once again, the aggregation program is helping residents save lots of money. How do you know if you're in the aggregation program? You need to look at your bill. If it says Constellation Fairhaven for the supplier, you're good. If it says anything else, you can go to masscea.com Fairhaven to join the aggregation program. You'll have the option to join at the default rate of 10% extra renewables or 100% renewable energy. The 50% extra renewable option has gone away as of this contract. My family has opted up to 100% renewable energy for our house. It costs about $200 more per year, and we can get a tax receipt for that extra money we sent. It was easy to sign up. If you have solar panels and already generate renewable electricity, you can still sign up for 100% renewable through the aggregation program. Changing your supplier has no impact on the credit you receive for your excess electricity produced. You'll be showing support for renewable infrastructure and the aggregation program. The program also has no impact on whether low-income or R2 customers receive the low-income discount, which is applied to both the delivery and supply parts of the bill. Fairhaven has a history of leadership on sustainability. As a green community, Fairhaven has set goals to reduce emissions. Increasing our percentage of renewable energy above the state mandate is a great way to address that goal. In 2020, we were the first and only community on the South Coast to lock in a 10% across-the-board increase in locally sourced renewable energy. See that green dot on the South Coast? That's us. We were the first community on the South Coast to go above the state mandate in our renewable energy percentage. Unfortunately, due to problems at the Department of Public Utilities, other communities have not been able to follow suit in this contract. Legislation is in the works to put greater power in local community decision-making and allow other towns to opt up like we have. By opting up town-wide, Fairhaven residents have supported 3,694 additional megawatt hours of renewable energy in 2022, which was enough to power 528 homes. Fairhaven is one of 55 towns in Massachusetts that have additional renewable energy as the default. Collectively, across the state of Massachusetts, towns like ours have added 1 million megawatt hours of renewable energy to the grid above the RPS requirements per year. That's enough energy to power 150,000 to 200,000 homes. As always, residents have the option to opt down to Fairhaven Basic, and you can see the price options here again. I encourage anyone who is able to choose Fairhaven Plus and opt up to 100% renewable energy through our aggregation program to do so. Again, this does not affect your net metering, and the cost increase is not that significant. By offering options for renewable energy through the aggregation program, we are building demand for renewable infrastructure here in New England, and I'm proud to live in a community that values our future. Thank you.
Okay, so we love that video. It says a lot in 4 minutes. And aggregation, or Green Municipal Aggregation, is a model that can easily be duplicated from city or town to city or town. So if you currently live in a place that doesn't have aggregation or is trying to get Green Municipal Aggregation going, I'd encourage you to use that video as a resource to educate like city council members or selectmen or anyone making decisions where you live to use that video and as a resource. So we'll include a link to that also. And thank you to Laura for making that. So let's dig into the report itself. Some of the key findings are that GMA has produced profoundly successful results. So this is for cost savings for ratepayers and also for adding more local clean energy to our energy mix. So we looked at 23 total time periods for basic service rates, and they change every 6 months, and found that 83% of the time, the average GMA rate was under the basic service rate. So we say that savings cannot be guaranteed, but 83% of the time for the time period that we looked at, which is 2017 to 2023, it was below the average GMA rate was below basic service rate, which is a good chunk of time. So of the 351 municipalities in Massachusetts, 167 cities or towns have aggregation plans approved by the DPU. 49 of those are exclusively served, or 49 outside of the 167 cities or towns can't have aggregation because they're exclusively served by municipal light plants. So the plans that we examined, or the plans that we looked at in Massachusetts, range from having no Massachusetts Class 1 options to including 30% or more Class 1 in the default option, that more than that's required by the state law. Here's our map that we try to keep updated periodically and refer to in all of our reports. So this is the 4th iteration of our State of GMA report in Massachusetts. And as we do these, we like to see the map get greener and greener. And for the first time on this website here, greenenergyconsumers.org/aggregation, we have an interactive map. So you can hover over your city or town and see what the status of aggregation is in that city or town. And we also have a PDF list, like a searchable list that you can search your city or town. And it also includes links to your aggregation website if you have one in that city or town. So please feel free to use this as a resource. And we actually love to hear from people if there's an update that we've missed. Like I said, we try to keep track of everything, but 351 municipalities is a lot. So please email me or Larry if you live in a city or town that maybe just went green or increased its default options, and let us know, and we'll try to keep this map as updated as possible. So the different categories of shades of green are how much Massachusetts Class 1 RECs are in the default option. So these range from 30% or more down to 1 to 4%. And Fairhaven, like Laura said, is that green dot over by the Cape Coast on its own, and we'd love to see more communities there go green as well, hopefully with the help of that video. So we only include Massachusetts Class 1 RECs as renewable, as qualifying for renewable because it's local renewable energy, and we make the distinction why we do that in Appendix 1 at the end of the report. So please check that out for more detail on the difference between national RECs or other types of RECs and Massachusetts Class 1. And so we have the brown option, the brown shaded communities that have a Class 1 that you have to go on the website and opt up into. You're not automatically enrolled, but there's still a Class 1 option there. And then some brown communities or darker brown communities that have no Class 1 options. The purple communities are the municipal light plants. So there's 49 of those. And then the various shades of blue here are the municipalities that we'd like to see go green soon. So 22 of them are the light shade of blue that are waiting for DPU approval. And the darker blues are ones that have been recently approved by the DPU and are about to roll out their plans. And then the white is cities or towns that don't currently have aggregation, but it's possible for them to have aggregation. So our report that we did we increased our cohort of communities that we looked at. Last time we looked at 38 communities, and this time we looked at 54 that had between 5% and 11% more class 1 RECs than the state's requirements. The time period we looked at was between August 2017 and October 2023. So the last report we published was June of 2022. So that savings was 1.3 cents per kilowatt hour. Over that time period, average savings for the 38 communities between 5 and 11%. So it's 1.3 cents per kilowatt hour versus basic service. That was before the winter price spike at the end of last year. So this time, the time period was longer and we looked at a little bit more communities, and that savings more than doubled. So it's now versus basic service, the average GMA community saved 3.3 cents per kilowatt hour. And that equates to 200 to 237 per year for the average household that's using 500 to 600 kilowatt hours per month. So here's a sort of summary of the data that we gathered. So you have your minimum and maximum rates for both utilities, and you have the average in the third column, the average minimum and maximum for all the 54 GMA communities that have between 5 and 11% in their default option. And then you have your savings in the last column. At the bottom right is the 3.3 cents per kilowatt hour savings. And here to put it in a visual is the Eversource GMA community. So we have two different charts for each utility that we look at. The blue line is the basic service rate that changes every 6 months. And then the sort of busier, different color lines, we broke out communities that had above 11% in their default offerings. So for example, you have in yellow Brookline that went from 25% in their first contracts. The GMA contracts go for usually 2 to 3 years. So their rates change every time they renew. So Brookline started out with 25% in their default and then went to 30%. And then with their third contract went to 36%. So that's that yellow line is their rate. And then the green shaded line is your minimum and maximum GMA rate for those communities that we looked at in Eversource territory. So it's the range, it's the full range of the GMA communities, 5 and 11%. And then this thin green line, here is the average GMA rate, which is what we compared to for basic service to for those 23 time periods to get to that figure of 83% of the time, the average rate was under basic service rate. So the average rate was under this blue line in both territories 83% of the time. And here's the same chart for National Grid. So a big part of what we do is try to find local renewable energy projects and support those projects as much as possible with the help of our GMA programs and our green power programs. So here's some pictures of some of those projects that we contract with to buy the renewable energy. And on the left here is the Scituate wind turbine, which we are really happy to serve the Scituate Green Municipal Aggregation with, very local, and that started, their aggregation started in March of 2023. So we've been buying from this turbine for a really long time, and it was great to see Situate's aggregation get off the ground and be able to serve that community with RECs from within their own community. And then on the right is the Johnston Solar Project in Johnston, Rhode Island, that we served some of our new Rhode Island aggregations that came online in May of 2023 with. And here is a map of some of the projects that we have contracted with and continue to contract with to provide the renewable energy to GMA programs and our other green power programs. So in total, the 54 communities in Massachusetts that have green municipal aggregation, we serve 21 of those. So we're estimating that, so we have the load data for 21 of those communities and approximate how many RECs that those communities require for their loads. And we kind of extrapolated that data to the 54 communities based on population and households. So we are estimating that GMA in Massachusetts is adding approximately 1 million megawatt hours of renewable energy to the grid, and that's above what's required by the state, and that's equivalent to the total power usage of 150,000 to 200,000 homes. All right, Larry, this is back to you.
Thank you, Michaela. So here's a couple more points, and then we're almost done with the presentation. We've determined that aggregation has been really effective at adding renewable energy. We expected that. That was the design. But we also knew that it would be a very efficient way, cost-wise, to bring renewable energy onto the grid. But we were really surprised to determine that it saved so much money compared to when a customer is on basic service with National Grid, Eversource, or Unitil. But at the same time, over the last few years, the Massachusetts Attorney General has been running studies, and they produced their fourth study a few months ago, showing that when a consumer chooses their electricity supplier on their own, a residential consumer, without being part of a municipal aggregation, that they tabulated that over 6 years, residents who did that lost a total of $525 million through their contracts, an average of $231 per year. They further analyzed, and they found out that residents of low-income communities and communities of color were twice as likely to sign up for a competitive power supplier, and they were therefore disproportionately harmed. So they're the kind of folks who are least able of losing that $231. And so the Attorney General's office has been receiving complaints for years. And what they've found is that there's a lot of suppliers who go door to door. They'll do telemarketing. They will do direct mail. I got solicited twice last week by one supplier in the mail with what I thought was very misleading, a misleading offer. And so the Attorney General's office has said, you know what, it's just impossible to try to get these suppliers to be good corporate citizens. So they have proposed a bill that would prohibit retail electricity suppliers from signing up any new customers except through municipal aggregation. So our point of adding this into the presentation today is that there are basically three ways to get power supply if you're a customer of National Grid, Eversource, or Unitil. One is to be on basic service. The other is municipal aggregation. And the other is to choose an electricity supplier on your own. And what we found is that the worst way is to choose a supplier on your own. The best way is through municipal aggregation. So the data is all there. We have it in our report. The Attorney General's office says that data. Just think about that, $525 million. And it's not spread across the entire state. It's on the customers who've chosen their own supplier. So to me, it's the biggest consumer issue that the state has had for years. Next slide, please. So aggregation, if it's so great, why isn't every community doing it? Well, the greatest barrier to the more widespread success of the aggregation model is the Mass Department of Public Utilities. That's the state agency that is responsible for approving the aggregation plans submitted by cities and towns. There are 22 communities waiting for the DPU to approve their petitions for aggregation. Several have been waiting for several years. I live in Quincy, which is now going on 3 years for approval of a program that is just like over 100 other aggregation programs in the state. No aggregations have been approved thus far in 2023. Only one, the city of Pittsburgh, was approved in 2022. Now, the DPU has opened up what they call a docket, and it's docket number 2367, where they are going to, they're taking comments on what could be done to improve the situation. And it's going to take a while. We think they should just, first of all, get on with eliminating the backlog. But on December 20th, there's a technical session being held at the DPU where they will be taking further comment if you're interested. You can find their website or you can email us and we'll send you the link. Next slide. So here are our recommendations. There's a bill in the legislature, House Bill 3852 by Representative Tommy Vitolo of Brookline and Senator Lewis. It's an act supporting load aggregation programs. And basically it requires the DPU to approve municipal aggregation plans by cities and towns on a more expeditious basis. And so it gives more power to cities and towns in that respect. We also support a bill by Senator Creighton of Lynn and Representative Moran that would, it's a bill essentially filed by the Attorney General that would prohibit suppliers and energy marketers from signing new contracts with residential retail customers. You may have seen this recently in the news, but the companies that make a ton of money off retail electricity supply are lobbying very hard to keep things as they are. And with the Attorney General's report, we just don't know what more information legislators need in order to, as we call it, stop the madness. So we also hope that the DPU will, if legislation is not passed, will streamline the process for aggregation plans. Our final recommendation is that the Mass Department of Energy Resources has a division called Green Communities that supports a lot of green energy activities all across the state. And your community probably is a green community, has received that designation. We think that that division probably could help cities and towns navigate their way through the process of aggregation a little bit better. So to us, aggregation has been ignored by the state and deserves more support than it's been getting. And so we think that we could add more communities very rapidly if they were given some support, particularly small communities that could use some technical assistance from someone at the state. Next slide. You can read our report. It's not very long. Hopefully you got something out of today's presentation. There's an executive summary with the report. And we also think the 4-minute video that Laura Gardner did was a pretty good primer as well. Next slide. So my job as executive director is to make sure that we have a great staff and that we're doing good work to help speed the transition to clean energy. And as it happens, this month, if you were to make a donation to us, it is going to be doubled by a generous donor who will match up to $15,000 in donations this month. And you can go to greenenergyconsumers.org/give now, and that will support the kinds of work that we do. If you go to our website, you can see all the different programs that we have and the public policy work that we do at the state level in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And I think that is our last slide. I'm sorry, upcoming events. We do a lot of webinars. We've got one we had one the other day on heat pumps and EVs tonight. And or last night, sorry. The more EV rebate, that's for electric cars, is coming up on the 19th. And we're already planning several for January and February. So the best thing to do is to bookmark greenenergyconsumers.org events. You can sign up for our blogs as well. And if you subscribe, you'll get them emailed to you. I just posted one that today about the topic that we talked about earlier about electricity suppliers ripping people off. We do a lot of blogs. There's another blog coming out very soon about electric cars. Probably 2 a week we do in that respect. And next slide. I think that's it. Now we're open for questions. So at the very bottom of your box, there's a Q&A box, and I'm going to look there. So is it possible for communities without DPU approval for municipal aggregation to join another city's program? For example, could the city of Chelsea join Boston's program? If so, would this provide any benefits to residents, better prices with more customers? Well, actually, it's possible, and it's a good idea. The act of a community aggregating its customers tends to work to get a pretty good price. It's not always a question of larger volume is better, but I certainly, if I were a community, I would at least think about it, and I would talk to the city of Boston. I think Boston and Chelsea would be a great match. Chelsea's been waiting for a very long time. And I would say what's more important is that the Mass DPU approved Chelsea quickly. It's been long overdue, just like in Quincy and just like many other communities. But it's funny, if a community made a proposal that they just wanted to join one of the over 100 communities that have aggregation, the DPU would still require them to go to the end of the line and get processed that way. So at this point, I don't think it would save much time for Chelsea. And if another community wanted to join an existing aggregation, there's nothing that the DPU has done recently that would make us think that it would necessarily go faster. That's the kind of thing that we expect we're hoping will change either by legislation or by the change in the guidelines, because it's common sense. If the state has already approved an aggregation and another community just wants to join, they ought to be able to do that. Another question, do we have similar legislative priorities and advocacy items for Rhode Island? What can supporters of green energy in Rhode Island do to employ best practices learned from Massachusetts? Thank you for asking that. The Rhode Island Public Utilities Commission, which is analogous to the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities, has approved the 7 cities and towns in Rhode Island much faster than Massachusetts has done. So we have 7 communities rolling in aggregation right now. Central Falls, Providence, South Kingstown, Newport, Narragansett, Portsmouth, I'm always Barrington. I don't know if that's all 7. And those were approved relatively quickly, and appropriately. The plans are all the same across all 7, and so we don't really seem to need the same amount of advocacy for aggregation in Rhode Island. It's going pretty well. What we could do, I don't know if you're in a community that is one of the 7 that we listed, but we're now working with Good Energy to try to get more cities and towns to sign up. So that's the beautiful thing about aggregation. It's scalable. We can add more cities and towns. We still have a lot of cities and towns in Rhode Island that aren't doing aggregation. And that usually is inspired by someone in the community, like Laura Gardner in the video that I showed, who goes to their city councilors or their mayor or their selectmen and tells them that they should do aggregation. Sometimes it's led by an elected official. And so if you want to reach out to us, we can help you connect with others in your community. And that's the best way. Otherwise, we have a very aggressive policy agenda in Rhode Island, as we do in Massachusetts. In Rhode Island, there's an act on climate that requires greenhouse gas reductions of 45% by 2030. And we don't think Rhode Island's going to get there unless it adopts some more aggressive policies very quickly. Similar to Massachusetts, but I think Rhode Island's further behind. And we're trying to get Rhode Island moving in that respect. So we could use your help on that. So you can email me if you have any particular questions. Next one. Somebody lives in Franklin, has enjoyed community aggregation for a few years, but not class 1. How would you suggest that we help that so the future contracts have class 1 content? Well, God bless you for asking that question. That's our favorite question. If you look at the map, we showed it, but Laura Gardner showed it on the South Coast and above it. There are a lot of cities and towns that have aggregation, but not class 1. So Michaela's showing that now. That is a decision made at the local level. And we would recommend that you talk to your selectman and you can hand them this report. I'm happy to go down to Franklin and talk to them about it. And if you would like us to arrange for that, and we would just sort of explain the benefits. You now have the numbers that show that people in Franklin could be saving money and going greener. And now with what Michaela's showing on the map right now, the code shows dark brown means that they're not adding class 1 above the requirement of state law. Light brown means they have aggregation where someone can sign up and get more renewable energy. Not a lot of people do that in those communities, for our understanding. But then there are communities that have 1 to 4% and then different grades going up. A community that does even just 1% class 1 above the state's requirement, when the whole community does that, it has a strong impact. So we'd like to see it be as dark green as possible, but we certainly would encourage a community to start at some level. But now we've got some data that supports that you can go to 5 to 11% and still save money. Are there any more questions? I think that's it. That's open for now. So are there any more questions that people would like to ask? Michaela, did we forget something? Do you want to add anything, or are we good?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, folks, we'll just hang on for a few more minutes and see if there are any other questions. So the way we think that this model can scale in a community that has aggregation, again, it's an opt-out program for everyone who was on basic service gets swept into the aggregation. But if you were a customer who was signed up with a competitive power supplier, in order to get into the aggregation, you have to opt into the program. You have to make a decision. You have to tell your utility that you want to switch to the aggregation. And so we're encouraging that. We've got all this data showing that you're probably paying more than you should with a competitive power supplier. So we can grow aggregation and its impact by having people opt into it. Then if you're in a community that has aggregation and it's green, that's great. You can opt up. A lot of communities offer 100% renewable energy, but some communities offer a 50% option that's a little bit more affordable. So there's different opportunities there. And then we can add more communities. As you can see from the map, there's a lot of white space with communities that do not have aggregation. And as we just heard, there are a lot of brown communities that have aggregation that should be trying to get some green. So we think that, did some analysis, we think that the 1 million megawatt hours per year that we think that aggregation is adding above the state's requirement, we could probably double that within a few years if more communities signed up for aggregation, went green, and so forth. So we're pretty excited about that possibility. Someone says, I joined late, would like to know how to sign up for the correct option in Providence. And did you answer that, Michaela?
Yep, I sent the website, and here is the enrollment link also. A lot
So
of times I found a lot of times you can just type in the name of the town and then aggregation or municipal aggregation, and it should take you in like a Google search or something, and it should take you to the correct website. But feel free to email me if you have any trouble doing it.
yes, one thing we find is that somebody might be on a competitive power supplier, not aware that the aggregation's existing. So now, you can opt in. And so that's a good example. Another one is someone might be moving into a community and initially they would be put on basic service and, we can get them over that way.
And Godfrey asked, how can I help my city, Dracut, Mass, move towards GMA? And what can I do to help my community advocate for this? I would love to help you with that, Godfrey, because I'm right next door in Lowell. So we should connect, and I'd be happy to make the trip over the border to Dracut and help you with that.
Do we know if Dracut is National Grid or Eversource?
They're National Grid, and I believe they have an opt-up option for 100% right now, but not in their default.
Okay. Yep. So as you can see by the map, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
How do you verify supply is actually renewable and not simply a certificate? RECs, the renewable energy certificates from out of the area are dubious, if not fraudulent. Actually, excellent question. Renewable energy certificates are potentially a legitimate way to support renewable energy, but the system that's in place has some opportunities there for evildoers to use it to greenwash. And so actually I'm going to put into the answer. I just wrote a blog about that very topic. So we have written a lot about this, and we get into it a little bit into our report on aggregation, but I'll try to be concise here. A renewable energy certificate is produced every time a renewable energy generator creates 1 megawatt hour of electricity, or 1,000 kilowatt hours. And it's meant to be a production incentive. We want renewable energy generators to produce more. And so beyond what they would normally get paid just for electricity, we want more wind and solar. We want it to displace fossil fuels. So we give extra credit to the wind and solar. Well, in New England, particularly in Massachusetts, we have what's called the Renewable Portfolio Standard. And the standard that we look at is called Class 1. That is for projects that are wind and solar, and they have to be built after 1997. So anything built after that, 1997, wind and solar, plus low impact hydro, plus anaerobic digestion, they all are eligible for Class 1 RECs. And the standard keeps getting more stringent every year. More and more, a higher percentage of an electricity supplier's mix has to come from those. So the demand is getting pretty tight in New England, and it's very expensive to build a project in New England. So the point of the REC is to help get it across the financial barriers that are needed. And so our organization has said, well, we want to increase demand for renewable energy above the state's requirement, but we're going to use the same standard. So we're going to even tighten that demand even more. And so all of the RECs that we buy and sell to a community are Class 1. And we are trying to, with this webinar and other blogs we write and everything else, we're trying to get people to focus on Class 1 because, which means in order to be Class 1, it has to be from New England, and it's going to be after 1997. There are RECs that you can buy from all over the country, and from a wind project in Iowa, for example, a solar project in Texas, and it's still a REC. It's 1 megawatt hours worth of proof that there was generation there. But the point is your purchase of a REC in that case isn't making that project happen projects in those states have great economics. It's much easier to build a huge wind or solar farm in Texas and Iowa. And so the cost of a REC in those states is something like $3.50. And it's 10 times higher here in New England, in Massachusetts. And so you get what you pay for. You can spend your money on a REC from Iowa or Texas, and all you're going to do is fatten the wallet of who's ever generating the power there. They were profitable anyway. We can kind of show that, it's a struggle to get renewable energy built in New England. And so the purchase of a REC makes a significant difference. So if you could, Michaela, if you could put in the URL to our blog. I just wrote one today, and so it's available on the very subject. I recently got a solicitation from a supplier who was offering 100% renewable energy, and basically was trying to tell me that it could come from Iowa, it could come from North Carolina, and it could come from other states. And to me, that would be greenwashing. Now, we could do that as an organization and sell RECs from all over the country, but we have studied the issue and we have decided not to do that. Then moving on to other questions, what can we do to ensure that the constructions of projects are environmentally sound in terms of other impacts, avoiding deforestation and the construction of new solar farms? Well, you can ask questions. Our organization does purchase from wind and solar projects, but we do some diligence, and we're avoiding projects that are essentially clear cuts. We are supporting projects mostly that on developed land, or there's a couple projects that are on landfills. There are a couple projects where it's a solar project on land where it's helping to keep the rest of the property open space, whether it's a farm or a forest. That's an issue that's a big issue in both Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And in Rhode Island in particular, a law was passed last year that's going to try to restrict solar development so that it isn't in core forest areas. We supported that bill. Massachusetts, the siting is a big deal. And the Audubon Society in Massachusetts came out with a report saying that there's a lot of space in Massachusetts on developed land or on rooftops to put solar. So they're trying to encourage the state to avoid deforestation as well. So we try to be as diligent as we can. Jeff asks, I pay a monthly bill from a solar farm in Massachusetts and get credits on the bill from Eversource. Does that make sense? Is it a duplicate payment if I'm in a town aggregation? No, those two things are different. An aggregation is choosing your electricity supply, and that's what the town aggregation will do for you. And that will have a certain amount of renewable energy in it. When you're buying what's called from a solar farm that's elsewhere, it's called community shared solar, and you're getting bill credits on your bill. So you're probably saving some money. You're probably paying 80 cents or 90 cents, and you're getting $1 back in terms of credits. That's usually the typical deal. It's really, you're supporting solar, but you're not getting the solar power into the grid. You're getting a bill credit. So it's like a la carte. You can have that in addition to being on the aggregation. If you were to have solar panels on your roof, a lot of people do. That is also something that is easily done in addition to being on the aggregation. Any other questions, folks? Good questions. We had good questions. There's probably more out there. It's 12:57. We did want to say we were hoping to keep you just for an hour. If you have additional questions, if you could go back on that last slide, you can email us. There you go. and we'd be happy to hear from you. One last question. Why does the approval take so long? Excellent question, Godfrey. That's the approval from the Mass Department of Public Utilities. I don't think I have ever heard a good answer. We do know that the policies in Massachusetts for clean energy have laid a lot of responsibility on the DPU, and maybe they need more staffing. I've not explicitly heard them saying that they're understaffed. I do think that they do need to hire more people. However, I actually just think it's been negligence. I think that the Baker administration was too cozy with the utilities and ignored the benefits of municipal aggregation, and that led to the backlog. I think now under the Healy administration, they've inherited a large backlog that's going to take some work to work through. But they've been in their position now for almost a year. The 20 or so communities that they have, they should just move them through. So we encourage you to contact the Mass Department of Public Utilities and express some interest in having them change their way of doing business. And I should say that the utilities don't get hurt when an aggregation happens. Their profits are not affected by whether or not an aggregation is happening in their community. However, they tend to dominate the agenda of the Department of Public Utilities. So the DPU and the other state agencies ought to be addressing the fact that aggregation is not only is it a cost-effective way to support renewable energy, but it's saving people a lot of money at the same time. Mark asks, is this presentation available to us? Yes, it is. Right after, within a day or two, we'll send you an email with the recording and with the slides in a PDF form, plus a couple of other links that you might find interesting. And I think we'll end there. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day.